Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going on a journey around Metro Vancouver to look at several future transit projects hiding in plain sight. With Transport 2050 as our guide, we'll see everything from simple tail tracks and switches to old right-of-ways and blank spaces, as well as other infrastructure that's already built to handle transit. Some of these projects are underway and well known, while others are a little more obscure, and a couple almost seem like fantasy. We'll start off by looking at tail tracks. Tail tracks are the short section of track at the end of the line. They're usually just a few hundred meters long, but sometimes shorter. Their main use is for turning trains around and storing trains and equipment that are not in service. But they also hint at future extensions. On the Millennium Line just west of VCC Clark, rails hung over the end of the line for nearly 15 years before construction started on the planned westward extension. The last pillar and crosshead had space for the next set of beams to be installed. Rails hang over the end of the adjacent pocket track as well, which will be used to connect to another future operations and maintenance center here. At the end of the project at Arbuda Station, 60-meter tail tracks are being built that will be used to store trains, but also allow for seamless construction when the line to UPC is built. At the end of the Expo line, just east of King George Station, the tail tracks there have been aimed down Fraser Highway for the last 30 years, eagerly awaiting its extension to Langley, now finally underway. Tail tracks at Waterfront Station have been in place since 1986 for a future Hastings line. While not as well known, the release of the Burrard Inlet Rapid Transit Study in 2020, BERT for short, showed it's still very much in the plans. When complete, it'll provide another way out of the downtown core and operate as a relief line for the Expo line. Over at Coquitlam Centre Station, a very short tail track has the Millennium Line set up for a short 2-kilometer extension into Port Coquitlam. Following the existing Canadian Pacific Rail line, at a rough cost of $400 million in 2019, the line would bring one station into downtown Port Coquitlam. As part of the current 10-year plan, it's likely that we'll hear more about this project in the coming years. Coquitlam Centre Station has been designed with 2 more platforms in mind. Using this drawing as a guide, Platform 3 will be built off the backside of Platform 2, allowing for easy transfers between inbound Port Coquitlam trains and outbound Lafarge Lake trains, whereas outbound Port Coquitlam trains will have their own new platform. Building a station with 4 platforms may sound like overkill, but keep in mind that TransLink is in the process of redeveloping the 9.3-acre station site into a massive mixed-use residential and commercial district. In addition, another 11.6-acre site on the other side of Lougheed Highway is being privately redeveloped with 9 towers up to 60 stories tall. Plus, the new station in Port Coquitlam will only be a temporary terminus, but more on that in a bit. The tail tracks and switches here were built with the Evergreen line in 2016, allowing for seamless construction with little to no service impacts when the line is extended. Transit planners have learned from the past about seamless construction. When the Millennium Line was built, an extra platform and several switches were installed at Lougheed Station for the eventual Evergreen extension. While that extension took much longer than expected due to political reasons, by building the extra platform and switches with the original Millennium Line, there were very limited impacts on regular service during Evergreen construction. Seamless construction hasn't always been designed into the network. Back when the Millennium Line was under construction, the connection point just east of Columbia Station was only half built. When that section of the Expo line was being designed in the late 80s, it was deemed unlikely at that time that the extension branching off there would be built. So when that part of the line was built in the 90s, only one switch with a pocket track was constructed, which meant that when the 2 lines had to be connected, 6 weeks of single tracking was required in the summer of 2001 to allow for construction. You can still see the remaining concrete base where the outer parapet was cut away. While it would be hard to imagine such a service reduction for work like that on the Expo line today, it's currently happening on the Millennium Line for construction of the Operations and Maintenance Center 4. The Millennium Line was never built with a new yard in mind at this location. Planners and engineers had to figure out a way to make the new yard work, all while reducing impacts to transit riders. While a solution was found, it still requires a multi-year single-tracking service pattern to allow for safe construction of the additional switches and flyover connection to the main line. Going forward, TransLink is designing future lines in a way that eliminates long-term service disruptions. But it's not the only way that things are being designed and built for the future. TransLink, local municipalities, and the province have another tool for long-term planning, by buying, preserving, and creating right-of-ways. Land acquisition for transit projects can be a major cost, especially when a line is being built through an area that has already been developed. To save time and money, purchasing and preserving right-of-ways is highly beneficial, and a practice that is used all over the region. We've already mentioned Port Coquitlam, but Vancouver is a shining example. The city has bought all of the Arbutus corridor from the Canadian Pacific Railway over the last few decades, with the largest purchase of 9 kilometers in 2016 for $55 million. In total, about 12 kilometers of dedicated right-of-way have already been purchased for a future streetcar network that will run from the downtown core, around False Creek, and then down the Arbutus corridor. Many of these areas that it will run through already have density levels that would support the better-than-bus level service. The line would eventually reach Marine Drive Station before continuing east along the Fraser River. The rail line here is still owned by Canadian Pacific, but is no longer in use as the vast majority of industrial customers no longer exist. The line goes through several moderately dense areas before eventually ending up in the River District. This vibrant new community is built on old industrial land, with over 10,000 homes, 1,500 jobs, shops, recreation, and schools planned for the future. A streetcar would complete this 15-minute community. The line would then continue through the employment-rich area of Big Bend in Burnaby before ending in New Westminster. Rail-based transit along this stretch of the Fraser River isn't a new idea. It's been floated around before in the early 2000s, with a study done exploring options for a line running from Marine Drive Station out to Coquitlam, but that was more of a regional commuter service instead of a local streetcar. Back in the north, the streetcar would head into Olympic Village before turning into downtown Vancouver and splitting into 2 lines. Again, the city has built new right-of-ways in these areas, allowing for the future streetcar. West First Ave through Olympic Village was built wide to accommodate the future streetcar running down the center of the street. Where it would turn north on Quebec Street, the intersection was expanded to provide ample room for the turn. While likely many years away, the planning that the city has already done will save millions of dollars in the future when the line is built. I have a video on this project that explores the whole network in greater detail and looks at the pros and cons. Check it out after this video. What do you do if your line doesn't have an existing right-of-way or wide undeveloped stretch of land to run through? Well, that's where the next level of planning comes in. The Burrard Inlet Rapid Transit Scheme is a great example of this. Burrard has garnered a lot of attention for showing different ways to connect the North Shore to rapid transit. While the final technology hasn't been decided on, it's clear that at least part of the route has already been planned for. The most discussed online is the so-called Purple Line. This line would run from Park Royal on the North Shore west to Phibbs Exchange, before crossing at the Second Narrows on a new bridge. Then, joining the Hastings Line and heading east towards Willingdon, eventually connecting to Brentwood and Metrotown after following Willingdon south. Looking at Willingdon, you wouldn't assume that it's been designed for rapid transit, but there are many signs indicating that it has. Let's take a look at a few examples. From Mosscrop to Canada Way, a wide boulevard with 6 lanes and plenty of grassy space already exists. The stretch already has dedicated bus lanes and would easily accommodate a guideway. A station spanning Willingdon could be built here to serve both BCIT and the massive redevelopment across from it. As for crossing Highway 1, space has been left on the east side of the existing overpass to build the guideway, and then continue running along the east side of Willingdon up to Brentwood. Using the City of Burnaby map tool, we can see the extra city-owned land on the east side of Willingdon that could be used for the future line. Standing on the sidewalk, you really get a feel for how much space has been set aside for this future project. Continuing north of Lougheed Highway, things get rather interesting. Over the last several decades, the city has slowly been purchasing all the lots directly to the east of Willingdon. We can see the changes on Google Earth over the years, but even more so using the historical aerial photos provided by the city of Burnaby. As far back as the 1960s, the city slowly started to buy these lots as they naturally came up on the market. While the original plan was for a possible future widening to 6 lanes, that has since changed to a transit line. It's an excellent example of planning ahead and purchasing early to save money and create space for future projects. Had the city waited until now to buy the roughly 26 lots that make up the space, it would have cost at least $60 million in 2024. Currently, the city is making good use of the land as the linear park, which is a surprisingly nice place to spend a sunny day, even with 4 lanes of traffic directly beside it. At the southwest corner of Willingdon and Hastings, a vacant lot that was recently set to become a 5-story residential building was cancelled and purchased by the city of Burnaby. During a hearing for the project approval, the city pushed to buy the lot and preserve the space for a future transit line just in case, keeping their options open. But what about the stretch of Willingdon south of Mosscrop climbing the hill towards Metrotown? Lined with lots that appear to go right up to the edge of the road, how would a guideway fit in here? Well, once again we turn to the Burnaby Maps tool to see that the property lines for the vast majority of these lots already have setbacks that make room for future widening. With these setbacks in place, there's enough room to redesign the street to accommodate guideway pillars. However, some lots will still have to be modified and landowners fairly compensated for it, but it'll be a much lower overall cost had the city not prepared in advance. Our last example on the purple line is at Metrotown Station. While there's been much discussion online about how the future connection could look, an aerial view of the existing station shows that there is a block of space set aside directly south of the existing station, where another 2 platforms could be built. Blank spaces are another good indicator of future plans. Production Way University Station has a great example of this. Just northeast of the station, a large empty space exists that currently is used as a short access road to the underground parking lot. While it's been underutilized for the last 25 years, this is where the lower terminal for the SFU gondola will eventually be built. When complete, it'll provide easy access and connections with the bus loops and SkyTrain platforms. It's highly likely that another set of escalators and elevators will be built on the east end of the station to provide easy access without leaving the fare paid zone. There's ample space on this end of the platform and below the station. The gondola project has faced many delays and roadblocks from Burnaby City Council over the years by requiring different route options to be explored, but it's clear that Production Way Station was always going to be the final choice. Arden English over at the Greater Discussion channel has a great video that dives into the project in detail. This next example has been hiding in plain sight for years. The replacement Pitt River Bridge is a rather unassuming project. The $200 million bridge was built in just 30 months, opening in 2009 with 7 lanes and a new interchange. But we're not here to talk about the 79,000 vehicles that cross over it every day. The bridge as envisioned is only mostly complete. Its final form is yet to come. Remember how we looked at the short SkyTrain extension to Port Coquitlam? Well, that project is only 2 kilometers for now. Eventually, SkyTrain will run all the way to downtown Maple Ridge. While that's still decades away, the Pitt River Bridge was built to accommodate the future train. The bridge was designed to take the extra weight associated with the SkyTrain. Foundations were strengthened to handle the extra load. Looking at the bridge approaches, extra piles and columns were installed to support the future beams. You can see the concrete pads where the future beams will sit. Looking down the bridge, we can see how once the extra beams and deck are added, the train will run on either side of the easternmost towers. Then, a lightweight structure will most likely be added for the pedestrian path on the east side, similar to the one on the Canada Line Bridge. While it's hard to put a number on what the exact cost savings are, based on previous SkyTrain bridges and adjusted for future inflation, it's probably several $100 million. Other new bridges in the region have similar plans for future rapid transit additions. The new Portman Bridge, which opened in 2012, has space set aside for light rail transit. Although the plans are not as clear, designing it to be compatible will save money and time if and when a line is built. While not designed for rail-based rapid transit, the Golden Ears Bridge, which opened in 2009, will carry a bus rapid transit line in a few short years. While there is an outline of an eventual SkyTrain line linking Maple Ridge to Langley via 200th Street, that is very far in the future and was not included in the bridge project. But hey, maybe in 30 years we'll see a nice new cable stay bridge carrying a SkyTrain over the Fraser River here. And now for some bonus fun facts that I learned while working on this project. The end of the Millennium Line at Lafarge Lake Douglas is the only stub that has no future plans for extensions. The end of the line points towards the ground and doesn't appear to have provisions to be extended further. Plus, currently there is not the population density to support it. Bonus fun fact number 2, The next new line in Surrey will run down King George Boulevard to at least Newton Town Centre. However, there are no switches or stub tracks in place for the extension. According to diagrams from the Surrey Langley project, there does not appear to be a plan to add switches on the east side of King George Station to accommodate. That means there's a possible chance that a new set of switches and fly-under will be added here west of the station in Holland Park. Now, this is purely speculation at this point, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see work here before the Surrey Langley SkyTrain opens to add in at least 2 switches and the start of a fly-under for the future line. While that would require a short shutdown of this section of track, it would be better to do it before SLS opens. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this video and learned something new about some of the future projects in our region. I had a lot of fun researching this video and going around to the different locations seeing things. It's always fun exploring our region and seeing what's out there. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.